All right, since we run on German time, we will begin now. Thanks everyone, first of all, for your attendance today and your participation and engaging with all our speakers and panelists and exhibitors. It's been a long day, and you know, it's sometimes momentum gets lost, but I think the discussions that we've been having have kept the energy very high, and I'm very happy about that. My name is Rami, and I'm a sophomore here at MIT, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the final part of the conference, which will wrap up what I think is an excellent day. Even the weather wasn't that bad by Boston standards, so you guys got lucky. This final session will be comprised by keynote speeches by Dr. Rana Dajani, Ms. Mashahid Al-Shamiri, Dr. Anas Al-Faris, and His Excellency Dr. Talal Al-Wazadeh. We will also have an interactive live polling session and a presentation by Edmund Aioub. To kick off the evening, our first guest, Dr. Rana Dajani, the Rita E. Hauser Fellow and Visiting Professor at the Radcliffe Institute of Advanced Study at Harvard University, as well as Associate Professor of Biology and Biotechnology at the Hashemite University of Jordan. Dr. Dajani earned her PhD in molecular biology from the University of Iowa, and ever since has been involved with research in genetics and biotechnology. She's the leading authority on the genetics of the Circassian and Chechen populations in Jordan. In addition to her scientific work and her numerous awards, she is a prominent advocate for women's rights, scientific progress, and education. Her organization, We Love Reading, has impacted over 10,000 students all over Jordan, and in addition to her advancement of stem cell research capabilities all over the country. Her speech is titled, "To See What Everybody Sees, but Think What No One Has Thought, How to Do World-Class Science in Jordan." Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Rana Dajani.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. I really want to thank the organizers for inviting me to be here today. I've been here since morning and I've learned so much and I'm so inspired. I feel I'm on a roller coaster of energy, so I hope we can keep up that momentum till the end of the day. And that you'll all go home having learned something to share with the people around you and to make a commitment to do something different in your lives starting tomorrow. The title of my talk is actually a famous quote that actually nobody really knows who said it, although some people attribute it to Arnold, who was a physicist, Nobel Prize winner, but even after I checked that, nobody's sure about that either. But I think it's very inspirational. I'm going to start my talk by sharing stories. And the reason I want to be a storyteller is it is talked about that a millennia years ago, when human beings were still evolving, there were two groups of human beings. There was a group that sat around the fire and told stories, and there was a group that did not sit around the fire and tell stories, and actually frowned upon those who sat around this fire and told stories, that they were wasting their time. And can you guess which group actually survived and is with us today? It's the group that tell the stories, right? So storytelling is in some way essential to our survival as human beings. So in the spirit of evolution, which I advocate, I'm going to be a storyteller to help us survive another day. So the three stories I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about science, I'm going to talk about humanities, and I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship. And I'll start with the first story, the one of science. So as today's discussion in the previous panels talked about, many of us come to the States and do our PhDs, and then we don't know what to do, right? Do we go back? Do we stay here? And sometimes it's beyond our control to take that decision. Well, to cut a story short, I actually went and did my PhD when I was older, when I was married, and I had 4 kids. But that story will be in another book or another talk for another time, because we don't have that much time. And just for the record, when I got this opportunity to do my PhD on a Fulbright in Iowa, my husband was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He resigned so that we could all go together as one family, and he would support me so I could pursue my dreams. So choose your partners very carefully. Okay? He knows. He knows. He's my friend. He's my friend and mentor. So we came back to Jordan because we wanted to come back to Jordan for family reasons and for commitments. I became a faculty at the Hashemite University, and I was given a lab that contained nothing. I didn't even have a laptop. I had to use my personal laptop for a year until they gave me a computer. So what do you do, right? And my specialty, my field of expertise was molecular biology, signaling transduction. So I was working with high-tech, animal facilities, cell culture, you name it, we were doing it, but I couldn't transfer that technology to Jordan. We didn't have any money, there was no funding. So what I did in that sense is that I started reading, because I wanted to compete internationally and do good science. So I started reading to know what's going on in science, even in other fields that didn't relate specifically to my discipline. And you know, a PhD by itself is not the end. It's a means on your way of becoming a scientist. In your PhD, you learn the skills and the tools on how to think scientifically, and then you could be anywhere and use those tools and skills and find your own niche so that you can excel and practice science. And that's what I did. I came back in 2005, the human genome had just been sequenced, and the HapMap project was coming out. For those who know what the HapMap project is, it's identifying the differences between human beings, which is less than 0.1% between us all, trying to identify those and relating them to different types of diseases. And so this was coming out, and I was reading all about it. And then there was the big story about DECODE, which was an Icelandic project where this scientist who was a graduate from Harvard went back to Iceland and started studying his own population to identify novel genetic risk factors related to complex diseases. And I was reading about him in 2006 and 2007, and he was publishing paper after paper in Nature and in Science, and I thought, wait a minute. I have a genetic isolated population in Jordan, in my backyard. We have, in Jordan, there are two minorities who immigrated from southern Russia 150 years ago because of oppression of religious reasons, and many of them actually settled in Jordan. There are the Circassians from the Caucasus Mountains in southern Russia, and the Chechens who later got their independency from Chechnya. So these were two genetically isolated populations, just like the Icelandic population, that I could study. And I was dreaming, you know, you have to dream. A scientist has to dream. Everybody has to dream. That I want to start publishing these papers just like Stefansson from DECODE from Iceland. So I created a team. And I wanted to study in these two populations complex diseases, meaning that they have both genetic components and environmental components, such as cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and cancer. And I chose to study diabetes because there's no stigma for diabetes. Everybody has diabetes. There's no problem if you're labeled as being diabetic. And as we know that diabetes is the next greatest epidemic, not just in Jordan, not just the Arab world, actually all over the world. And if I could identify in these two populations, which happen to be on the human ancient lineage, a very ancient branch, similar to the Basque in Spain, if I could identify new genetic risk factors, I could be contributing to the scientific knowledge all over the world. And I would be at that level of international science that we find coming out of the US or Europe, because I have this unique population that nobody else has, right? So it's seeing what everybody sees, but thinking what nobody has thought. So what I did is I created a team, which is also kind of, when I was in Jordan, started all this in 2007, in Jordan you didn't create teams, because you could only be promoted if you published a paper by being the single author, all right? So no teams. I didn't care, because I wanted to do good science. I didn't care about being promoted or what were the norms in my country. I cared what is the norms internationally of doing good science that makes sense. I'm a molecular biologist. I created a team of anthropologists, biochemists, epidemiologists, because I wanted to study these two populations from A to Z. I wanted to do a full study like the Framingham study done here in Massachusetts that would carry on longitudinally studying these two populations and become an expert in those two populations around the world. And so we started creating a team. We looked at doing genetics, genome-wide association studies, which was the latest technology at that time. And I needed to find a partner to actually carry out those tests in the US, because we didn't have that equipment in Jordan, and it was cheaper to send it to the US because of the, we don't have running costs to keep the machines running in Jordan. So I think this is one of the earliest examples where usually universities in the West come to our parts of the world seeking somebody so they could use them. Actually, I did the opposite. I was using my collaborator at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and I was telling him, listen, I'll pay you, I want you to do these samples for me. So we switched it, and it became an equal partnership, a peer-to-peer real partnership, and these are the examples of how we as scientists, coming from less developed countries, can actually practice good science if we have confidence in ourselves. And we became the world experts on Circassians and Chechens in the whole world. And at the same time, we were serving these local communities, because when we collected our samples and we did these random sampling of both populations all over Jordan, we were serving them. We brought down physicians, we did biochemical tests for free, we were giving them medical advice. So we did anthropology studies, we did epidemiology, and we published many papers showing the different prevalences of diabetes and metabolic syndrome and hypertension in these different populations. We also, my genetics part, we published the first copy number variants that we found in the Circassian and Chechen population as a novel risk factor for diabetes that wasn't reported before. And the good news is that because we were well known internationally for our expertise, we were approached by Berkeley from the lab of Rasmus Nielsen, who came to me and said, Rana, can we work with you and use some of your samples, because we're trying to understand the human migration out of Africa and how it went through Asia Minor and then spread to Europe and India. And we would love to collaborate with you, because you have samples of these people who used to live there, and now we want to take samples from the modern humans there. So we collaborate with them, and actually, we just got a paper accepted in Nature that's coming out next May. So I'm very proud that it's a lab in Jordan. Yeah, that's something you dream of. I mean, you dream of even in the States, right? And so we're able to do that. So I'm very proud. And it's Jordan. It's not that because I came to Harvard and did research at Harvard that I got that paper. No, it's something we did in Jordan, locally done, with the minimum funding we were able to do. And at the same time, in order to do this research, I wrote grants. Again, people frowned upon me, because in Jordan, you are not getting a grant does not count in your promotion at all. And I was writing grants, and everybody thought, oh, that's crazy. Why is she writing grants? I mean, usually what they do is, scientists in Jordan, all developing countries, it's not just Jordan, they go back in the summer to their alma mater to do research, and that's how they publish. Or they create groups and they say, you publish, you put my name, and I publish, I'll put your name, and they get it. So I refuse, because I'm doing science because I love science. I'm not going to take any shortcuts, I'm going to do the real thing, even if it takes me 1,000,000 years. So I wrote grants. And I was able to get, in the terms of Jordan, $250,000 to set up my own lab, which is not bad for Jordan. So where there is a will, there is a way. It's just that you have to use your mind, use the tools you learned, and think, and be very observant, which are the hallmarks of a good scientist. This is some just acknowledgements for all the research partners and students that have been working on that big project of the Circassians and the Chechens and the funders along the years. Now, I'm still observing as a scientist, right? So some of the things that came up when we discovered the copy number variants in the Circassian and Chechen population, we wanted to take those and try to understand the biology behind those genetic risk factors. So we were planning to do induced pluripotent stem cells. Now I wanted to learn how do I culture and how do I create induced pluripotent stem cells. So I went and attended workshops at Woods Hole, but when I came back I thought, wait a minute, and I went to Yale and worked on the Stem Cell Center to gain the expertise and the experience. But when I came back to Jordan, I thought, wait, first I have to make sure that ethically, it's okay for me to use human embryonic stem cells and so on and so forth. So actually I created a committee of people from different disciplines, different stakeholders, to actually study, is it okay to use human embryonic stem cells? Can we kill a fetus to do that for the purpose of research or for the purpose of therapy? So we created a committee from theologians, from lawyers, bioethicists, physicians, scientists, and even patients and normal people, so that we could study this together and come up with a consensus. And actually, Jordan was the first country in the Middle East to produce a law for stem cell that was passed in 2014. So we're very proud that we are the leaders, even in policymaking, to support science in Jordan and as a lead for other countries to follow. And actually, at the time, we were working with human embryonic stem cells, where in Islam, it's permissible to use them up to 5 days. At that time, Bush was in charge, and nobody was allowed to use federal funding for stem cell research at that time. So actually, we were doing something much more advanced than what was allowed at the federal level in the US. Then the Syrian crisis happened, right? And it affected all of us. I'm half Syrian myself. And the Syrians poured into Jordan, which was family and taking care of friends. And then we realized that the trauma that they were going through, especially the young children and the youth, being exposed to everything that's going on. Again, I'm a scientist, so I see what everybody sees, but think what nobody thought. So we worked together with Yale University on a project to understand the trauma and its effect on these kids, and try to study some interventions that were being rolled out by international development to help the kids. So actually we created a consortium, and we were the co-PI in Jordan as part of this study. Again, it was an equal partnership. And we went in and did two really important things, very innovative things. We didn't just look at self-reporting done by these children on how they felt in terms of trauma and security and resilience and all these measures of psychosocial health. We also used biomarkers. So this came in my expertise as a biologist. So we looked at blood samples for immune system reactions, and we looked at hair cortisol for looking at the level of stress in hair. And we were able to do all these experiments, which was the first study that was able to study biomarkers in a sector, in a humanitarian condition for Arab youth. And we published our work, and we showed that for some measures, using a particular intervention that was run by Mercy Corps, we were able to see a reduction in human insecurity as a result, which was sustained over 11 months. And we also showed that cortisol levels actually went down. This is an old slide that got published in December last year. And we also wanted to study what is the effect of trauma on epigenetics. And epigenetics is a new field of science, relatively new, where whatever a mother is exposed to, whether it's trauma or she's smoking, or whatever's going on in the environment, will affect not just her fetus, but the ova, the eggs of her fetus, if her fetus is a daughter. Therefore, whatever the grandmother's exposed to will affect her grandchildren later on. So we are trying now, we haven't produced the results yet, trying to understand what is the effect of trauma on children and grandchildren, especially with all the wars going on. And my daughter tells me, oh mama, this is the immortal kiss of our grandparents affecting us. So we achieved this very exceptional partnership, equal again, peer-to-peer, between Jordanians and US and Canadian scientists. We also developed new tools which were ethically acceptable in the Arabic language that we developed. We had our input in it to make sure they were culturally relevant, ethically relevant. And we connected with people, and we had a lot of media attention that we were in science. So last month, our work was published in Science, not as the research, but there was a whole new special edition on resilience in the world and science, and we were centerpiece in that science. So I urge you to go read. It talks about Jordan and my university being part of that research. Now, I told you a very nice story, right? I'm telling you all the success stories. I mean, there were a lot of terrible things that were happening, and it wasn't always nice and rosy, but we always remember the good stuff. I have a very bad memory. Actually, my memory is like a goldfish. I only remember the good stuff, right? Which is good, keeps you optimistic. And that's why my husband says, Rana sees in a drop of water an ocean. Yeah. But I write about the problems because we need to highlight them so we can address them and make things better. And so I have almost a yearly column in Nature. It's called The World View, and I write about our challenges that we face. So this was the last one I wrote in November, and I'm telling the world that developing nations don't need just money. Money is the least of our problems. What we need is to change the bureaucracy and the management. And this was mentioned earlier by Dr. Madak. It's not about brains. We have plenty of brains. It's not all about money. We can get money. It's about changing the culture and the environment and the bureaucracy and the management to help support the minds and the brains that are actually doing good science. So we need to do that. This is a call for people to try to help in doing that. Now, I also realized that as a scientist in Jordan, I faced all these problems, but they are not unique to me as a female. They are problems that all scientists, male or female, in Jordan or the developing world face. But at the same time, there are also some challenges that I face as a woman. And it's not because I'm from Jordan. All women across the board, even those in the US, face those same problems. So this is a very important point to keep in mind. So what did I do? I always think, what can I do? I have to do something. And so I started a mentoring network for female scientists in Jordan first, and then we called it the 3 Circles of Alimat. We actually gave it that name. We won a grant from NSF and NSA to support this mentoring network. So it was the first circle was in Jordan, the second circle was all over the Arab world, so we recruited 8 countries, and the third circle was between Arab female scientists in diaspora, in the US and those in the Arab world, so that they could help each other and connect with each other. And this mentoring toolkit is now available on our website. You just Google it, you'll find it, or you can email me. For anybody who wants to take it and use it within their organizations as well. And by the way, it works for males and females in STEM and outside of STEM for any situation. Now, my second story, the humanities. So, I also observed in my career as a female scientist that we have less female scientists in the STEM fields as a career, not as education. I thought you were going to raise it up when I had 10 minutes. All right, so it's fine. And then if you look at the research, this is published research from L'Oreal, they tell you that when you're in school, they're 50-50 in primary education, but then as you go into undergrad and then graduate levels, females start dropping out. And then at the career level, they really drop off. Now, however, when I looked into Jordan, because I look in my classroom has 90% females. And I know this is not just in Jordan, but across the Arab world. So we have a lot more women in STEM in the Arab world. Therefore, I don't think it's that lack of education is what keeps women out of the career force in the STEM fields, at least not in our part of the world. Maybe it is in other parts of the world. And then, but if we look at work in the career in universities, yes, we have less women in the STEM fields. Therefore, I like to draw a line where we are still high up in the Arab world. We're very high up till we reach after the PhD level, and then we go down like all the rest of the world in terms of careers. So the second explanation that's put forward is that maybe females are not educated enough. I know we talked about that. I mean, maybe the workplace is not it's not flexible enough. It's not friendly enough for women. And however, McKinsey produced a report showing even companies who may give maternity leave and give flexible hours and create nurseries, they still don't get more women back into the workforce. So apparently it's a very complex issue and not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. So I started thinking why we're always discussing how can we get more women into the workforce, and we're lamenting that we can't get enough women into the workforce. Did anybody, as a scientist, if you keep asking the same question and don't find an answer, you need to shift your attention. You need to think in a different way, right? So I started thinking, why don't we ask women what they really want and go from there, right? Have a paradigm shift in how we address things. And when I found out, I did that. I got a fellowship and I interviewed hundreds of women, and I found out that women don't just want one thing, as we would assume, being in a career and being very senior. They want a kaleidoscope of things. You know, this is, do you know what this is? Does anyone know? Yes, it's Gracia Familia. So it's such a beautiful ceiling. This is in Spain. And I think that's what women want. Some of them want to be very, very successful. Some of them just want to take care of their children or not. And some of them want to go zigzag up and in. So there was a study done at MIT here by Lottie Bailey, who was one of the first female professors at MIT. And she had shown, she followed female and male graduates from MIT, and she showed that the male graduates, their career went up, the red line, and then plateaued at 40. While for females, it went up, zigzag, but kept up going after 40. So we can do a lot of things as we multitask and do things. So what I wanted to call for is that females, or males for that matter, should be given the freedom to pursue what they want whenever they want, and to trust them, because they know when is the right thing to do whatever they want. So we need to help the young generation to know themselves. They have to learn to read so that they can gain knowledge, and then give them entrepreneurial skills so that they can create their own future. And we need to write these stories. We talked about this earlier in one of the times. We need to write. So I don't want to preach what I don't do. So actually I was here at the Radcliffe and I wrote a book called 5 Scarves, Doing the Impossible. It'll be out this summer, so keep a lookout for it. Now, my last story, which is entrepreneurship. Again, living in Jordan after I came back from the States, you know, when you look around you and you change scenarios, you notice things you didn't notice before, right? Good things or bad things. So I noticed when I came back from my PhD that children in Jordan and the Arab world don't read for pleasure. And reading for pleasure is very important for your imagination, to learn about others, empathy, and to become the heroes you read about. So I started thinking, why don't children read for pleasure? Although, you know, the first word in the Quran is Iqra. And I found out it's because they don't love to read. You know, they tear the books out right after school. We see this, right? So they don't love to read. And once I brought a gift of books to a child, and the dad told me, "وكمان قراية بالصيف." I thought I was doing a favor to the kid. So they don't love to read. So as a scientist, you know, I'm not a social scientist, I'm not an education specialist, but I was curious. I wanted to know, why don't they love to read? So I found out that the reason they don't love to read is because to plant the love of reading, you have to read aloud to the child, as early as even when the mother is pregnant. That's how you make a person fall in love with reading. We don't do that as a habit. We don't read aloud to our kids every night, as other countries do. So what do? I thought, the only way for me is to read aloud, not just to my children, but to the children around me. And why reading aloud makes you fall in love with reading? Because as you grow up, reading aloud with your parent makes the connections of the neurons in your brain connect, and it creates this feeling of happiness, satisfaction, security that is connected with reading. So when you grow up, you like to read. Why? You don't know. It gives you this good feeling because it comes from sometime a long time ago. So what did I do? I thought, okay, I have the knowledge, I know what to do, but what do? Pass a law? Nobody's going to listen, even if they pass the law. We know there's a law that you're not allowed to smoke in Jordan, but everybody smokes. So what do? Do I knock on every door and ask every parent to read aloud? Yeah, but that's impossible, not practical. And then I thought, wait a minute, there's a hadith by Prophet Muhammad, every one of you is a protector, a guardian. And Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So I thought, well, I have to do something, right? I felt the responsibility. So I said, I gathered the kids in my neighborhood, and I started reading aloud to them in the mosque, because I wanted a model that would spread in every neighborhood, in every country, in Jordan, the Arab world. I'm dreaming the whole world. That was my dream. I called it We Love Reading, and it was an effort with my kids and my husband. We did it together. And basically, what is the model? The model is we train adults to read aloud and to be social entrepreneurs. And why social entrepreneurs? Because we train them to find a place in their neighborhood, think of a way to gather the children, and then find a time and on a regular basis to read aloud to the kids. All right? And they have to read in their native tongue because it's for fun. It's not school, it's not education. So it became a program not just for inspiring reading, but also for becoming social entrepreneurship. And we tell these women and men we train, you have to pay it forward. So I trained you, you trained someone else. You hear about We Love Reading, you have to tell somebody about it. So now every one of you has heard about We Love Reading. So all of you have to go home and tell someone about it and tell them the same thing, okay? All right, so because of that, we have spread now to 38 countries around the world. So my dream was not a dream in the end. And we're very proud that this is a local Jordanian initiative that started in Jordan, that now is in 38 countries around the world. And we have been called the social movement by Charles Leadbeater. And the reason is because it's a simple, it's sustainable, it's based on volunteers, and it's all based on research. So we do research with Yale, with Harvard, and Brown to make sure that what we do is correct. Because I'm a scientist, I put science in everything. So it's evidence-based and human-centered design. And somebody mentioned IDEO, so we won the IDEO.org award, so they worked with us also to help develop a business model that solves the problem with nonprofit and profit, that hopefully is also innovative as well. And by the way, a book was written about innovation in education, and 16 projects around the world were chosen. One of them was actually MIT OpenCourseWare, and another one was We Love Reading. And when I train the women and I tell them, hey guys, we're in the same book with MIT, they tell me, no, Doctor, MIT is with us. That's the spirit, that's the spirit. So the impact, we have 3 impacts of the program, right? We have impact on the children, and the children, as I said, they do better in school, they choose books instead of toys, psychosocially they're doing better. We've been able to show that we can change their behavior towards gender, disabilities just through reading, and their psychosocial status is much better. And we did this with the University of Chicago, and we published all of our research. We also, the impact on adults. What happened? Okay, there was an impact on adults, which that these adults become leaders, and they're more, their psychosocial status improves, especially in refugee contexts. Because in a refugee context, the adults are wandering aimlessly, they don't know what to do. Suddenly there's a program that they take control of, because when a refugee starts We Love Reading in her neighborhood, she gets all the credit. Nobody knows about us, we're in the shadows. That's another innovative way of how we were able to create ownership and agency in adults, and that's why it's sustainable. We have people in Zatari who have been reading for 3 years for free, because they believe that they are helping their communities and themselves and their future. The third impact is on the community. So we have many stories. I'm just going to share a very short one, where in Aqaba, when we went and trained, one woman told me, why don't you build us a library? You know, this kind of victim attitude, do it for us. And I said, if you want a library, why don't you make it yourself? We gave her the training. 6 months later, she invited us to inaugurate her real library, which is that picture on the top. What happened, she started reading in the mosque. the numbers of the children went up 10, 20, 30, 75. So a local contractor offered to build her a room. All the neighbors came and got paint and wood, and they created a real library. This was 2013. We visited this library in 2017, it was still running. We developed our own books in Arabic to enrich the Arabic culture, and we succeeded because we are grassroots, human-centered, we occupy a very focused niche, and we are based on research, and we have a business model that works for anyone who's interested to know about it later. I'm ending. So, last three learnings. International development. We don't want to wait for international development to help us. We need to help ourselves, because that's the only way we can sustain whatever programs we produce, and these programs will have impact because we made them. We have to uphold justice and never be quiet. As scientists, we have a role to uphold justice in whatever we do, and we cannot separate science from politics in that sense, and we have to take care of the refugees around us. Now, as a biologist, I like to add my last scientific theory into this. So, you know the chaos theory? When a butterfly flutters its wings in China, there's a hurricane in the Atlantic. So we believe in Jordan, we fluttered our wings a little bit, and now we are a hurricane of change all over the world. And lastly, we need to focus on, all this can only happen if we have critical thought and curiosity, and that's why we need to foster philosophy and critical thinking. So in Jordan, a new institute had just opened. It's called the Institute for Critical Thought. The founder is coming actually to Harvard to give a talk on May 1st, so I urge you to follow him, or if you're in Jordan, to go to his institute and follow him up. Everyone is waiting, so please, this is a call for all the students, all the professors, all the professionals, that we need all of us to work together to make a difference. And will we succeed? This is the last page from Dr. Seuss. All the places you'll go. I don't know if you've read it. It's a great book. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Woman, man, kid, you'll move mountains. I read this to my university students, by the way. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rana, she summarizes why we are here. She is here to make an impact and make a difference. We want real people to make change on the ground. We are fed up with committees, with making policies and so on. We want hands-on, and I am very proud to see her, and we are lucky to have her. Thank you.
Thank you. This success is the success of my students, all the women and men around the world and in Jordan who've been working, all of us together. Nobody can work alone, right?
Yeah, but we need a leader.
We follow, we try to do our best. So do you think it is possible to do this kind of research?
All right, so all comments from now on will be in the form of a question. But thank you very much. So now we'll have questions on Slido, we'll have questions in person. We'll try to do 3 questions, hopefully, so we can move on and make sure everyone has enough time.
Yeah, you can do that research anywhere you want. It's not about the country. I mean, it's maybe a little bit more difficult if you don't have those resources like you would in the West. But believe me, even in the US, people struggle. You need to write grants, and it's very competitive, and you need to publish, and it's very competitive. So it's not that the US is any easier than it is in any Arab world. Maybe it's just a different set of problems, right? But it's a journey you have to do. So yes, you can. It's about reading, finding the scientific questions, seeing what everybody sees, but thinking what nobody finds. You can be a good scientist if you want to be. Other questions?
Who has a question from the audience? We'll take one from the audience, right here.
Yes.
Thank you. Quick question. Who is your role model?
What is your drive?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. My role model is every one of you. You are my role models. Every one of you is what inspires me that no, we can do more. Because I see you, the future in all of you. You and all the youth around in the Arab world, and actually all of humanity. You know, we are all together in this, regardless of where we come from, what is our religion, or anything.
All right, so we'll take one last question from Slido, and then,
Graduate degree. Okay, great. That's a great question. You need to find your passion. That's the answer. How do you find your passion? Read. Go visit places like our speaker in the morning, Mr. Jum'a. Go listen to music. Go listen to a lecture about a topic you've never heard about, right? And talk to people and get engaged. And then by doing that enough, you'll find that passion, something that makes you wake up at night, that gets you excited in the morning, that wants you, to go to do this thing. And when you find your passion, you will go and do it. You may not find it now, and that's okay. Life is long. You don't know how long it's going to take. But that's okay. Just keep searching for it. Because when you find it, believe me, work becomes play. I go to work. I don't go to work. I have fun all day. Right? So, and that's what you should look for in your life as you go forward. And by the way, all of us in our lives, we're always looking for happiness, whether through money, through education, whatever. It's all looking for happiness. And the best way to find happiness is when you help someone else.
When you give it to others.
When you help someone else, when you give it to others. That gives the best satisfaction. So reach out, help people around you, and you will discover your passion and who you are, and you will make an impact. And don't belittle anything. Don't say, oh, I did this and did that. They're small things. There's nothing that's small. Everything counts. Remember the butterfly effect. Thank you.